All right, perfect. Great. Well, thanks everybody for joining today's webinar. Hopefully you guys will find this will be an interesting one. Certainly a topic that I've been kind of wanting to cover for some time and just hadn't had the opportunity to dig into it. So here it is, Sinutrain, utilizing its fullest potential. I am your presenter, Chris Pollock. My information here is in front of you. As always, feel free to reach out to me with any questions you guys may have on the Siemens product from the CNC side. Certainly, if I don't have the answer for you, I will absolutely try to do my best to get us to the right person that can answer that. Certainly, my phone and my email is here. Probably best case scenario will be email me, but you can always give me a call as well. So, looking to the future, we have a couple pretty interesting seminars coming up that I wanted to mention. In June, we're going to be doing a shop mill and program guide specific seminar on working with standard cycles, specifically to milling. You've seen in past webinars, we've maybe touched upon some of our standard CAN cycles, but we have a tendency to spend a lot of time in the more advanced cycles, like the contour and regular pocketing and whatnot. But what I'd really like to do is do a webinar really digging into the meat of the base CAN cycles. So all of the different drill functionalities, all of the different milling and pockets and boss milling cycles, thread milling, engraving. So we're going to spend the hour and 15 that we normally do just digging into those specific cycles. After that, August, we're going to get into looking at shop turn, but really talking about more working with ID programs, ID geometries. We do a lot of OD work, but we have a tendency to jump over and not really dig into the ID side of the world. How do I get a hole into a part? How do I do internal work once there's a hole there? That kind of those features, ID grooving, ID threading. And then in September, we're going to take a look at our trig help functionality. This one, at this point, I'm speculating probably just milling. Maybe we'll touch upon turning too. I haven't really decided. I still have to kind of create the full content. But at the end of the day, it's going to be, hey, what happens when I have a print that's not really detailed the way I need it to be, doesn't have all the information? Well, the control can figure some of this stuff out for you. So with that being said, we want to do a webinar to really show you how do you take advantage of this capability, this intelligence that's within the control, and how do we apply it in a real-world scenario? So that's something we're going to be looking at come September. Okay, so as most of you probably already are aware, our CNC4U main website is where all of my webinars are stored after the fact, as well as upcoming promotions. So I just wanted to make sure you had the links here for both our main website and our webinars subset or sublink under the main website. Certainly keep an eye on this as we have new webinars coming up. By all means, keep an eye on what's going here. But the other scenario, come back and refer to this stuff. Obviously, you can click on the view recording link and watch any of these webinars as many times as you want. We're going to try to keep them up here with all this content as much as possible. But additionally, in the CNC4U that I really wanted to take or make note of is our in-person training. So in Chicago, on the outskirts of Chicago, in Elk Grove Village, we have our primary facility. In this primary facility, we offer in-person workshops. They're 3-day seminars. We do 3 different levels of operation and programming training, starting from a level 1, going all the way up to a level 3. Once you get to the level 3, that's a full 5X course that I personally host. We also have a 3-day service and support webinar. Not webinar, but in-person training. All of these trainings are free of charge. You guys just have to certainly handle, your expenses out there and while you're there. But the classes are certainly free of charge and here for you to take advantage of. The main website, you can get to it from the CNC4U, but there's a couple sublinks you have to hit. So I would encourage you to use the website I'm showing you in front of you, which is the usasiemens.com/CNC training. When you go there, you're going to get a list of all of the current classes. We don't update this this page on a regular basis, so it's going to show you all the classes for the past year. So some of them will have already passed. Just make sure you scroll down to the later classes. Usually we update it kind of like a January through January type of scenario. So you'll see the upcoming classes further down. You can click on the agenda link, and kind of like you see here, there will be a little pop-up with the specifics on the course. And then if you click on the register, there's a quick little registration link, and that will guarantee you a spot in the class. Seating is limited. We try not to host any more than 12 attendees at a time. Just obviously, if it gets any bigger than that, it can be, we won't get enough one-on-one attention with each person. So certainly if it's something that you guys want to take advantage of, by all means, please feel free to register for some of the up-and-coming classes. I think our next level 2 class is, I believe, in June, and my next 5-axis class, I think, is this July. But check the website, take a look, and if it's something you guys want to take advantage of, please feel free. So today with Sinutrain, Sinutrain is specifically supporting the 828 and the 840 controls. So that's what we're going to be talking about or looking at. So anything we talk about today is specific to 828 and 840. 808 has its own kind of version of Sinutrain. We call it 808 on PC. There are some differences to that. We're not going to be talking about that one specifically in this webinar, but if you do have questions on it a little later, let me know, and we can certainly handle them at that point in time. Okay. So our course overview, which I'm sure a lot of you guys saw when you saw the promotion come through for this webinar, but really the concept here is I've been using Sinutrain all the while in all of these webinars to mimic a machine, but we tend to jump over all of the nuances to Sinutrain and what it is as a standalone package, as a machine emulator and all its capabilities. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different things. We're going to first talk about just, how do I get it? And what do I get? What are my different options as far as what we're getting? How do I apply it or install it physically on a machine? Once we get it all set up, we're going to talk about some additional features like our machine configuration tool. We're going to talk about creating machines, modifying machines. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to use it to better take advantage of this type of system. So first things first, we certainly want to talk about, just how do I get it? How do I install it? What can I start to do with it? So first things first, we do have trial versions available. So we're going to be mostly talking about our version 4.5 edition 2 version. That's what you're seeing here on the left side of the screen. But as well, we will speak a little bit about the 4.7 version. Really, 4.7 is the next version of machine software that's being released. Right now, we're concentrating heavily on 4.5 because that is where the majority of the builders are still shipping product, and there probably will be for quite some time. But as 4.7 machines come out in the environment a little more, it'll be more important to support the Sinutrain for 4.7. So we will talk about both, but most of what we talk about is 4.5. Now, in either case, you can get a trial version. The way it works in 4.5 is it's a full functioning version, but it's only going to work for 60 days. Once you're outside the 60-day window, then you will need to acquire a physical license to turn it back on. But during the 60 days, it does everything that the standalone package, license package would do. In fact, it's the same install. It would just need to get a license at that point to turn it back on. Now, with 4.7, we came up with a slightly new strategy. Here, we're going to have a basic version and then a licensed version. Now, the basic version does not require any licensing, will run indefinitely, but it is limited on its capabilities. So some of the things that we won't be able to do is import external machines. You guys get to see a little bit about that. If you write any programs, you can't export them to bring them to a machine to physically use them. So depending on how you wanted to apply the product may depend on whether or not the basic version will work for you. Certainly, if you're just using it for kind of getting used to the navigation of the control, using it from a support standpoint, or maybe just a very simple basic training standpoint, the basic version would probably be more than capable. But if you were going to want to use this to really be able to create programs, run them on the machine, create very specific class content maybe, then you would want to look to get the full version. Now, in either case, if you'd like to get a copy of the trial version, we do and we have hosted it so you could download it online in the past. The problem is that the files are so big that it tends to be a very time-consuming process, and you tend to have a lot of hiccups trying to download it. So what we're doing now is we're actually sending you guys out free of charge physical hard copies. So if you want to get a hard copy, request it through the email address we have here below, which is the cnc.marketing.us@siemens.com, and that's all lowercase. At that point, send a quick email stating which version you would like to request, and then from there, you can we'll send you out the appropriate disks. You can install it up, and away you go. All right, and of course, oh, that was interesting. Oh, there you go. So from there, the next step would be, what if I want to get a full purchased or full licensed version? Here, I wanted to include for you the different part numbers for each of the sections that can be purchased. We're referring everybody that wants to purchase a copy. Certainly, you can always talk to your machine tool dealer or local sales. So if you're buying it through machine tool distribution or direct from an OEM, they would be probably your first scenario to go through to purchase a copy. In some cases, some of the machine tool manufacturers don't look to actively promote Sinutrain or sell it. They refer it to us. So in that case, you're more than welcome to call our 1-800 number, our main Siemens support line, and they'll be able to get you a quote and go through the whole process so you can purchase it directly from us as well. So what you have here is the first one is the actual Sinutrain seat for 4.5, and the part number here is 6FC number. So that's going to be our full version of 4.5. The add-on software for the machine configuration tool, which we'll talk about here shortly, has the part number down here. As well, you can get the full version of 4.7, and this would be the part number for 4.7. Now, when you get to the machine configuration tool in 4.7, we did change the name of it. It's no longer called the machine configuration tool. It is now called the option read setup archive. Does the same exact functionality. Difference here, it will not require any additional software. The functionality is actually installed automatically with Sinutrain, so you just need to get an additional license to activate it. But you would still need to purchase that license via this part number. Okay. So, what is required from the installation process? Well, in 4.5, and you'll notice on 4.7, hardware restrictions, they're pretty much the same thing. The software is not very tasking on your system. 1.5 gig single core processor with 1 gig of RAM, 2 gig of hard drive space. This day and age, that's pretty minor. But what certainly pays note of wanting to point out is the operating systems we support. So in 4.5, we currently support Windows XP, Professional, or Home, Service Pack 3 specifically, or we will support Windows 7, 32 or 64-bit. Now, outside of that, there are some ways you can get it to function in Windows 8 and Windows 10, which we will talk about here shortly. But the official supported software is, or operating systems, is Windows XP and Windows 7. Now, 4.7, since it's newer software, we certainly now support not only Windows 7, but Windows 8. And interesting enough, I have installed 4.7 on a Windows 10 seat, and it didn't require any other additional steps. I think 10 and 8 are so close that it didn't seem to affect us. But from an official standpoint, we're currently supporting 8.1 and 7. So if you do run into problems, it might be hard for us to get around them in the Windows 10 scenario. But as I stated, I have personally installed it, and it's running great in 10. So I don't think we'll run into any major issues or stumbling blocks there. So if I go to install, we're going to get the software, whether we get a CD, whether we have it in a zip file, get it downloaded, however we get the software. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get to the setup exe. From there, launch the setup.exe. It's going to go through, your traditional, accept a couple acknowledgments, the normal stuff you would see when you would start installing a piece of software. But the first main screen where you have to make a decision or a choice, you're going to get to this setup Sinutrain for Sinumerik operate, and it's going to ask about the programs that you want to install. Now, this again is specifically on 4.5. So in this scenario, you're going to want to pick minimum the Sinutrain for Sinumerik operate and the automatic license manager or the automation license manager. Now the HMI CAD reader, I always let it install with it. It's not that big. It's not going to use up that many resources. But if you are worried about the amount of space you have on your system, by all means, you can opt out of doing that. But you are going to need certainly the first two by minimum. Generally, I always recommend pick all three. Then from there, click Next. It's going to be a host of a couple different questions. It may ask you to reboot the machine depending on if it has to update some backend files. But all in all, once everything's said and done, the system will be installed. Now, what happens if we're going to try to install 4.5 in Windows 8.1 or Windows 10? So what will happen if you try to run the normal setup.exe like I just showed you, it's going to pop up this window you see on the left. And it's going to basically tell you that you cannot install the software on an operating system of Windows 8. Blah, 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 whatever version it's physically on. So you're shut down at that point. You can't move forward at all. You say, okay, it closes the installer, and you're pretty much stuck. But what a lot of people don't realize, and Microsoft has anticipated these compatibility issues with different pieces of software, so they added a compatibility tool to be able to aid you in installing software that maybe wasn't developed specifically for Windows 8 or Windows 10. And the way you get to the compatibility tool is you go back to that setup.exe like we would normally launch, but instead you're going to right-click it, and in the right-click, you're going to see a couple spots down, it's going to say Troubleshoot Compatibility. So you're going to select Troubleshoot Compatibility, and on the next couple slides, you're going to see some of the screens that you pick, but this is going to allow you the ability of actually installing the software in Windows 8 or Windows 10. So from here, what will happen is once you select the compatibility mode, it's going to give you these two options. What I always recommend is go right to troubleshoot the program. So this way she'll go in and she'll evaluate the program to validate why maybe it wouldn't work. Once you've selected that, the next option, there's 4 options here. I always choose the program worked in an earlier version. This way it kind of, I think, steps through a bunch of different extra steps where it's trying to evaluate itself. So just check that box, click Next. You're going to pick an operating system that it worked properly in. So in that case, I would always choose Windows 7. You could use XP. Don't use Vista because we never supported Vista. But yeah, Windows 7 certainly would be fine here. This one happens to have Windows 8 selected because I was doing this on a Windows 10 seat. So pick Windows 7. Then move on by clicking Next to your next screen. Now at this point, this gets a little confusing because you have this test the program button. In earlier versions of this tool, it might have said test compatibility, but your eye is going to the blue box that's saying test the program. But you don't actually want to do that. What you want to do is just simply hit the next button at this point. And when you hit the next button, it's then going to do a quick evaluation, and then you're most likely going to come up with this incompatibility program fixed, a little checkbox. So what happens is it's now associating something in its backend to this setup.exe that's going to allow it to install emulating a Windows 7 environment. So at this point, you just simply hit the close troubleshooter, go right back to your setup.exe, double-click it like you normally would. Now, don't be surprised if it asks you to restart the system. That's pretty typical when you go to install software, specifically ours. A lot of times they want a fresh boot. So just say, okay. Once it comes back from that first boot, you might have to just go right back to the setup.exe and double-click it again. But once you double-click the setup.exe, it's going to just launch as normal. It won't do that test anymore. You won't see that validation where it's telling you that you have an incompatible version or operating system. And it's going to install just like it would have had it been in Windows 7. So give it a shot. So certainly if you have a PC with Windows 8 or Windows 10, use this compatibility. I think you'll be quite happy with the results. Now, when you're looking at your file structure with your Sinutrain disk, I always like to point out that there is a manual for Sinutrain that you get with all that software. So right there you see the Sinutrain booklet.pdf. So the Sinutrain booklet, if you launch it, it does support 2 languages. It starts with German, and then as you go further down, you'll get the English version. But in here, it steps you through step-by-step on the standard install. Now, certainly not the compatibility mode that I just showed you. That's why I wanted to spend as much time kind of detailing it out. But when it comes to the standard install, and then really the functionality. So a lot of the stuff we talk about here in the rest of the webinar, they do have supporting documentation for this inside this manual. So check it out, take a look at it. It's probably one of the most overlooked pieces of documentation, and it's very, very handy. Okay. As well, if you're installing 4.7, you get the same booklet. It's been updated for 4.7 with a lot of the new functions and features that 4.7 possesses. Again, just to talk about it or to bring it back up another time, the operating system in 4.7 is going to be Windows 7, 32, and 64-bit. I'm personally running it on 64-bit. Runs quite well. And then you also have the Windows 8.1. But like I said earlier, I installed it on a Windows 10 professional seat that I have here in my office, and I didn't need the troubleshooter. I was able to install it straight through as I normally would have. So take advantage of that. Okay. Now, additionally, we did mention the machine configuration tool. I'm going to show you what that does a little later in the webinar, but while we're talking about installing software, I just wanted to talk about it briefly. So if you do end up purchasing the machine configuration tool, it will be sent to you as a separate piece of software. So it's a function that actually works within Sinutrain, but has to be installed to get the option. So you're going to get the physical CD. So take a look at the CD, run the setup exe. When everything's all said and done, when you go to extras, you're now going to have an option, as you see here, called Machine Configuration Tool. So prior to installing the Machine Configuration Tool, it would go from the Language Update tool and immediately down to Check License Availability. That machine configuration would just be missing. Not even grayed out. It's just not even there. You can't even tell it would have been there. So that's what the install does. Now, there is a license associated with it. So when we talk about the license management side of the software and really what activates the software to become a full license copy, you will need an additional license. So when you order it, it will come with a separate USB stick. That USB stick's going to have the license on it. Okay. Now, one of the things I like to point out to people when they're first installing and setting up Sinutrain, one of the known things that will wreak havoc in Sinutrain is hibernate mode. So generally, I always warn people that if you want your machine to hibernate, and that's okay, don't leave Sinutrain running. Because what will happen is if I'm inside of a physical machine, when the system goes to hibernate and it goes to shut off, it potentially can corrupt the machine I'm in. Now, I've never had it affect Sinutrain as a piece of software, so it's never had to be reinstalled. But what you'll find is these machines that I'm going to have inside of Sinutrain, which sometimes I spend a lot of time inside of them, if they get corrupted, my only alternative is to physically delete or remove that machine and then rebuild it or re-import it. So I'm going to lose whatever was in that physical machine. So Sinutrain itself will run fine if you happen to hibernate, but if I'm in a machine, when it does hibernate, it can corrupt that machine. And what will happen is commonly you'll see kind of like the message you see here where the selected machine configuration cannot be used at the moment. You know, best case scenario, if this occurs and it does show you the window, a simple reboot will get the system back running and the machine back and running. Worst case scenario, you'll reboot, Sinutrain will run again, but when you go into launch the machine, it's going to give you more alarms, and the machine's going to be a basket case, and you're going to have to physically delete that actual machine. So if you can avoid it, if you don't need it, I would disable hibernation mode. As well, in past versions, we've run into some compatibility issues with other pieces of software running on your PC. Officially, this is not a problem since 4.5. Unofficially, I have run into scenarios where I just had machines that we just couldn't get installed properly, giving us all kinds of crazy problems. And at the end of the day, it ended up being one of these programs was there. We removed it because the user wasn't using it, and sure enough, everything got happy again. So if you run into a problem trying to do an install, certainly the first thing you want to take a look at is, do you have any of these pieces of software running in the background? And I would say the biggest culprit of all of them is the Microsoft Live Essentials 2011, the Live Suite. So the Live Suite encompasses a bunch of pieces of software. That's where your Messenger comes in, Movie Maker, your Bing toolbar, a bunch of things come in with the Live Essentials. That has been known to give us issues for Sinutrain. So really, normally, if it installs fine, installs clean, I wouldn't even worry about looking for any of this stuff. But if you find yourself on a specific PC and you just can't get it installed, it's giving you alarms, maybe it seems like it installs, but when you go to launch your machine, it won't run, I would say first thing you want to do, take a look and see if any of these pieces of software are running. If you don't need them, then by all means, remove them and then try reinstalling. If you do find them and you want to remove them because you think that's giving you problems, make sure you do a clean, full uninstall of Sinutrain and then reinstall. Hopefully that will resolve the issues that you were having. Okay, so what's installed? What happens? We just went through this install process. So specifically in 4.5, you're going to get the License Manager, which I see here in the top left-hand button. You're going to get the physical shortcut for launching Sinutrain. And then in 4.5, you're going to get the CAD reader. Now, come 4.7, the CAD reader is actually built into Sinutrain, and it's actually also built into our machine software. So for that, you do not get the CAD reader externally anymore because it's already inside of there. So the only difference, if you had installed 4.7, you'd only get the 2 buttons as opposed to the 3. But this is what we're going to start to see, and this is what we're going to start to get the chance to play around with a little bit. Now, once it's installed, you still have to get this license physically in to be able to support the software. So what will happen here is when you launch it, and we're going to see this in a second because we're going to go through a demonstration on it. We're going to launch the License Manager, and you'll notice that there are no licenses currently. So we have a couple options. What I'll show you is how to first activate your trial license, and then you'll get your 60-day trial to come up. And then from there, once you've acquired a license, how to transfer it in and out of the machine. So this is the process here for doing it. So what happens is you go to this License Manager, you're going to navigate to a USB stick, you're going to see this license. Now all the license is, it's just a file that's going to reside on your hard drive. It's a hidden encrypted file. If you find it, because you can see it if you view all files, view hidden files, don't ever touch it. If you try to copy or paste or do anything to the file outside of using this License Manager tool, it will self-corrupt. So that's where you need to use the License Manager. This is going to allow you to manipulate that file. And really all you're doing is copy and pasting the file, or moving the file, shall we say. So you navigate to your USB stick, you highlight the license file, and then you're going to go to the license key option. We're going to select transfer. Once we select transfer, we're going to tell it where to transfer, and you always want to transfer it to your primary root directory. So generally it's going to be your C drive. Once you've done that, you select OK, you're going to see it's going to go through and telling you it's transferring the file. Once everything's said and done, the file will now reside on your hard drive. Very, very important. Remember that your file is sitting on your hard drive. I can't tell you how many times you get guys call me up and say, hey, I got my new PC. I forgot to transfer my license, and now I don't have a license anymore because it went with my old PC that went back to IT and got wiped. Or, more importantly, my hard drive crashed and I lost my license. That happens too. So in any of those cases, as long as you keep the initial packaging that we give you when you get the physical Sinutrain copy, we can regenerate licenses and send them back out to you no cost. But you do have to keep all of the original paperwork. So what I always suggest, guys, when you get Sinutrain, you're going to get this nice big fancy box. It's going to have all these different certificates on it. Keep the whole box. Just keep it, put it somewhere safe. God forbid you forget to bring your licenses off or you lose your hard drive crashes. These things happen. We can regenerate your file. But generally, what you're going to want to do is you're going to move the file back and forth. And it doesn't matter where you save it to, but typically you just dump it on any USB stick. You know, the fancy stick we give you is nothing more than a basic USB stick. So you go through the transfer process, bring it back out. You can move it to another PC, transfer it over, and you can bounce your licenses all over the place. So you could have Sinutrain installed on 5 computers, and when it's time to move to that computer, you just bring the license with you. That's why the guys do that kind of stuff. Okay, so we talked about a lot of different stuff. Why don't we segue over and take a look? Now, a couple questions did come in. A couple general questions. We're going to cover them a little later. Okay, so what I set up here is I have a very blank generic machine with just our Sinutrain installed up here. And we want to kind of talk about what you see, what you get. So here's our couple buttons. So we have our license manager. We have our 4.5 shortcut. We have our CAD reader shortcut. And the CAD reader I actually talked about in quite a bit of detail on a previous webinar. I think either the last one or the one before that. Wasn't very long ago. So if you're interested, we're not going to go into the CAD reader in any detail, but if you'd like to find out more about it, check out the other webinar. And then the final one, this happens to be because I installed Windows or I installed version 4.7 here. So that's the shortcut for 4.7. So first things first, I'm going to just launch the Sinutrain currently. And actually before that, I do want to double check. I don't think I've put any licenses on this one. Oh, I do. All right, so I'm going to transfer the licenses off real quick because I want to show you how to initiate the trial license. So this is really the same process in reverse. So what you're going to do is you're going to find the license. I'm going to grab 2 of them because I have the machine configuration license as well as the standard license. And now I'm going to use the license key. I'm going to select transfer, and I'm going to tell it where I want to transfer to. So I'm just going to put it to a simple USB stick. So I'll pick the stick, say OK. It's going to go through this transferring process. And now if I look at my C drive, and this is the way your system would normally look when you first get it, you first install software, there's no licenses because they're physically sitting on this given stick. Now be careful when you're in here that if this pull down gets changed to installed software, missing keys, or licensed software, you may not see the licenses even though they're there. So like let's say for argument's sake, I'm looking at the software, I may be going, gee, where's my license? I can't find them. So you do want to make sure that this viewer is selected to license keys. This way it's going to show you the specific license keys. Okay, so first things first, we want to launch Sinutrain. So for the first time, basically. So we double click on Sinutrain, it's going to fire it up. And this is how your first install Sinutrain is going to look. It's going to be completely blank, no machines in it, nothing there. So we got to decide about machines. Now we're going to talk about building machines here in a second in more detail. But what I want to do is I just want to create a simple one to show you how to activate the trial license. So here I'm just building a basic machine. Doesn't really matter. Okay. We'll talk about all this stuff in detail in a second. So what happens is the first time I go to start a machine that I just built, we're going to fire up the start button, and it's going to say, hey, you don't have a license. Would you like me to start your trial license? So it's as simple as clicking on the Sinutrain trial link. Once you click on that, basically hit activate. Now it's telling you you're currently working with a trial license. The license will expire in. Now the 60 days, that will do a countdown for you. So every time you launch the software, it's going to just warn you. That's going to tell you how many days you got left. So just simply say OK, and now it's going to start. Now, I've already run this once, so it's not going to show me. But you're most likely going to get a few pop-ups that are allowing access to your firewall. So the way it's going to look, and I took a screenshot of one, is you're going to see these couple pop-ups that say allow access to the firewall. That's absolutely normal. There's usually 3 or 4 of them. Just hit the allow access for each of them. Once you've done it, you'll never see them again. That's why I took a quick screenshot of them, because from here on out, I'm clean. So just make sure you do allow access. From there, it comes in, it launches the Sinutrain machine. And we'll talk about some more in a second here. But what I want to show you now, if I shut down, and I'll shut down Sinutrain for a second. that if I go back to my license manager and I look at my C drive, I now see that there is a license here, and it's saying it's my trial license. So you're going to automatically get that once you initiate the license. From here, it's an active countdown stage. So once 60 days goes, it's gone. Now, you do not have to wait for this to expire. You can transfer them in once you have got your licenses at any point in time. So in this case, I'm going to my E drive, picking my 2 licenses. We're going to transfer them. Now, again, always send it to the C drive. Say OK. Drops them over. Now, once they are here, I'll have the trial license there. Don't worry about it. It's always going to stay there. But now, if we go to launch that same machine, it's not going to give me the warning anymore. It's just going to go fire up the machine and run it. Where had I not transferred the key over, it's going to give me that pop-up telling me I have X amount of days left on my trial. But your trial is now running down. So, once you install the full licenses, doesn't mean that you can pull them off in, 8 months and you'll still have X amount of days left. It's going to run out from your CPU clock. Okay, so let's get back to our PowerPoint here. We're going to talk about creating machines because this really becomes quite important. So there's a couple different ways to create physical machines in the system. Here, I can create machines from a template, which is what I just did briefly. We'll go into a little more detail on all the machines I have. I can create machines from an existing machine. Now, that's really handy if you start to push it, like some of us do, and you start to do a lot of customization within the Sinutrain machine. You may want to duplicate one of that. So here, you can actually create an existing machine of a machine. And what's neat is once you do this, that machine can be handed off. So it's not only inside on your Sinutrain seat, but you can move it anywhere you want. So maybe you have a colleague where you are modifying a machine that you're using, and he wants to get the same exact machine. You can create an existing machine from one. This is that second option down. And then it can be copied and brought over and then imported. And that leads to your third option, which is importing a machine configuration. So here, I can go and select a machine that you had exported, and I can import it into another piece of software. Or maybe you go to one of our training classes. A lot of our classes, we use this software, and we're going to hand you a Sinutrain machine that's got all the examples in it, all the course contents, all built into it. That's how you do it. You go here and you import a machine. And then you can also export the machine. So the creating will create a duplicate one in your library, and the export allows you to then take that machine and send it out of your system. I saw a quick question come in that's pertinent to where we are right now, which was I have some set files created for 4.4, but they do not work in 4.5. They certainly should work in 4.5. I have a lot of set files that I bring in from older 4.4s into 4.5. The version that we ran into problems with was the older 2.6 version. You couldn't bring those in, but once we went to the 4.4 series, those should have had full compatibility. So you may want to take a look and try it again. The other thing is, are you running 4.5 or 4.5 edition 2? You may want to update to edition 2 to make sure. 4.5 wasn't out that long. There might have been a limitation there. Okay, so we can build our machines. Once we've created some machines, or we decide how we want to create the machine. In this case, I want to create one from a template. Then I select what type of machine I want. And there's a few different machines here. Sometimes our terminology is not the clearest, so I did want to take a second and talk about some of the machines so you guys are familiar with what you're actually going to get if you pick it. So the second one down, lathe with driven tool. Driven tool is a live tool. So basically this is a 2-axis linear lathe, but your spindle is also a C-axis, so that would be your third given axis. And then you'll have a physical driven tool, most likely on your turret. That's your live tool motor. So it's really a C-axis lathe with live tooling is the driven tool. And it's a rear turret configuration. When you go to the next one down, that's the same configuration, but now we have a Y-axis. And when we say counter spindle, we're talking about the secondary or sub spindle. So you can build really a 4-axis, it's kind of a 5-axis lathe because you have the sub spindle as well. Simple vertical mill is a 3-axis milling machine. When you get to a vertical mill with a swivel table, that would be a 5-axis machine with a trunnion style table. So that's an A carrying C configuration. The vertical mill with dividing attachment, that is just a simple 4-axis machine. And it's a full 4-axis machine, so it's not an indexing head or anything along those lines. So if you happen to have, or you want to simulate a 4-axis vertical mill with a 4th axis table, pick the vertical mill with dividing attachment. There's a couple 828 configurations. However, 828, 840 are so close, I generally don't bother using the 828 configs. But if you want to, because maybe you have more of a basic configuration on your end, you can pick those. And then advanced machines, we certainly have a 2-channel lathe with driven tools or live tools. So 2-channel would be like a twin turret style lathe where I can run 2 separate programs independent of each other. Lathes with driven tool or the simple vertical mills with ISO dialect, that is, and we've talked about in other webinars, our ISO compatibility mode or our FANUC compatibility mode. ISO and FANUC really got to go synonymous, but it's really anybody that follows the ISO protocol of programming, FANUC included. MITS does, Yasnek used to, I believe. There you can take FANUC-based programs and run them virtually in those machines. And then below that, you do get a mill turn machine. So this would be a 5-axis milling machine that has turning capabilities. I think I saw somebody was talking about the FD machines for DMG Mori earlier on the Q&A panel here. So that would be an FD. That would be your standard FD machine, would be our universal mill turn. And then the vertical machine with swivel table and collision avoidance is probably our most advanced machine. It's a 5-axis trunnion, but it has our collision avoidance functionality. So in there, you actually can see a full spatial model of the machine tool. It's very, very neat. It's actually the machine that I use when doing my 5-axis class. So all of these are available for you. Simply select the one you want. Once you select it and you hit next, it's now going to ask you to name it. We give you a default name. You see that right here under the simple vertical. You can change the name. That's under your general tab. You can change the descriptions. All this is fully editable. Same scenario under language. I didn't do the pop-up. It defaults with the English language. If you do want to get it in a different language, there's an additional install. I do not believe it costs anything, though. I think it's free of charge to get the language packs in. But the resolution is something you do have a tendency to change quite a bit. So here you would go and pick a given resolution. That'll be how it physically fits to your display. So you'll play around with that based on your specific monitors. You click Finish, and it's going to build the machine like you saw earlier. Next step is importing a machine. Importing is really quite simple. It's really a matter of just pointing to a physical file. It's a .set file, .set file. The set file is basically our equivalent of like an archive file for the machine. Instead, this is specifically to just Sinutrain. So find your file, browse to wherever it is, click on it. It's going to then come back in and give you the exact same window like you just saw. But now when I finally select OK, it's building the machine from a machine that was not part of our library. When you want to export a machine, however, there you're going to pick the export function, find the machine that you want to physically export in your list, and then you can tell it where you want to export. You give it some kind of name, you hit save, and it will then build the set file. So whether it's one that we duplicated or one that we just had in there or we're giving to somebody else but we've made changes to, you can start to export the machines. So looking at that, here we were in Sinutrain earlier, and we had built one. But if we shut down, and we physically say, okay, I'm going to create a machine. It's a matter of back in this subscreen, just picking the new icon. Here you're going to get your different options. So pick one you want. So if I'm going to configure, let's say we were going to configure a basic 5-axis mill. We create a new one from the template. Come down and find the one you want. So I'm going to do the vertical mill with a swivel table because I know I want it to have a 5-axis mill. And you will get a little list here of all the different axes. So if you want to double check, scroll down and see if you got all the axes you're expecting. Click Next. You can give it some name. Now, if you want to build the same machine multiple times in the library, you will have to change the name slightly. We only allow you to have one machine with the exact same name within its library. So put a 2 or a 3 or 4 or something different on the name if you want to have 2 of the same machine. Now the resolution I'm going to leave at the 640, but at any point in time you can come back and change any of these settings. So you click Finish, it builds the machine, it's here in our library. If I want to change those settings, once it's highlighted, click on the Settings option. And then here again, I can go back to my res. You can do this at any point in time. I could change the name. Maybe I'm importing a machine externally and I can't change it at that point. You can change the name of the machine you have in your library. But once it's in, start it. It'll fire up and start running that machine. So now, in this one, since I picked a lower res, you see how there's a little bit of dead space around my keyboard, where the one I had previous, I had the 800 by 600. 800 by 600, 640, it's referring to this little tiny screen, not your full display. That's why all our guys are like, well, boy, wouldn't I be running a much higher resolution than that? It's just that little display. So you just kind of pick the one that fits your machine. If, in fact, we want to import an external, then I would have to go back to New and do my import. And we'll talk about that when we go to machine configuration. Okay. So, Harvey had asked for us to go over the config again. Harvey, if that's not clear, shoot me a quick little response to your question and we can go into it in more detail. But we're going to go to the machine configuration tool next, which is probably what you're referring to. Okay, so now, the machine configuration tool, what does this do for me? We're talking about it at a very high level, but what do I really get out of it? Well, what's really wild about the machine configuration tool is it lets me take an archive that I pulled out of a physical machine, whether it's my machine or my customer's machine, and then I can build a virtual machine that mimics it to a T. I mean, everything that I'm going to see in that machine outside of maybe some custom screens is going to be paralleled physically in Sinutrain. Now, there's a couple things that you have to be aware of that I'm going to talk about from the initial setup side. So first things first, there's a couple machine parameters you must set, and that's what you see right up here, this 11.2.10 and 11.2.12. So you want to make sure both of these are set to a 0. 210 is a hex bit, so it's a 0 hex. 212 is just going to be a standard decimal value, so just put in a 0 there. And what that has to do with is when building the archive, it's whether or not we want all of the physical parameters or just the ones that have been changed from system default. With this setting, you get an archive with every parameter, and we need that for Sinutrain. Most builders leave this at 0 anyway. If your machine's not at 0, you can switch it here and leave it indefinitely. There's no reason other than maybe your archives will be slightly bigger, but we're only talking about probably less than a half a meg difference. It's not a big difference here with this change. But it's a must when you go to build it, because if you don't have this set, it's going to tell you when it evaluates the physical archive whether or not it's good or not. So set those 2 parameters, go and create your archive as you normally would. If you guys have never built archives, I would suggest taking a look at the preventative maintenance webinar that Danny Vitullo did. He did a great job on a lot of this stuff, and specifically he talked about building archives in detail. But here, you want to make sure when you're building it that you pick NC, PLC, and drive. With or without comp isn't as critical. And HMI data, you can use it, but the problem comes in the archives get extremely large if you pick the HMI data. And if maybe you're emailing this to somebody, specifically because you don't have the tool, somebody else is going to build it for you, you'll find that a 3 megabyte archive becomes a 150 megabyte archive with HMI data. And there's not a lot of gain to it. So generally I'll say just make sure you pick NC, PLC, and drive. Now, you need these 3. They're a must. You don't need the HMI. So build your archive, then you go through the importation and creation process. Now, if you're doing this for an 828, however, there's a little bit of a snafu. So what happens here is in an 828, 828 still builds archives with an ARC extension. They build archives with an ARD extension through the normal tool mechanism. So, but when you go to import into Sinutrain, it has to have an ARC extension. So we have a hidden command, and it looks like one of our attendees here knows about it, and that's our Control-Alt-C function. So what that's going to do, a typical Control-Alt-S on any system will dump a system archive right to your USB stick. But on an 828, it's going to build an ARD file. If you use a Control-Alt-C command, it's going to immediately create an archive right on your USB stick, but it's going to be an ARC archive. With that archive, it can now be imported into Sinutrain, into the machine configuration tool, and you can build archives for 828s. You do, however, have to make sure those two parameters we mentioned before are set. So once that is complete, now you're going to build a machine. So what will happen is you got an archive, you have it sitting on your PC somewhere. You're going to go to the machine configuration pull down. That's under the extras button. From there, you now see this first window. First thing we ask you is the NCU the system's using. Generally, I will always leave mine set to a 730. I don't find a big benefit here, or certainly haven't found anything where it hurt me on selecting a 710 or 720. Those are all specific to 840, however. If it's an 828, tell it it's an 828. That potentially can set the importation a little cleaner at times. But pick your NCU, your hardware platform. Browse to wherever your archive is sitting. It can be on a USB, it can be on a hard drive. We don't care. It doesn't matter. Click Next, and then it's going to examine the archive. So if you didn't set up the parameter properly, this would be the point. She would come back, pop up, tell you there's insufficient data in the archive. That's a dead giveaway for you that, hey, we forgot to set those two MDs I mentioned. As long as everything's good, it'll come through. It'll now pop up the same window that you saw before for naming the machine and the resolutions. But now additionally, you have with this stop machine, this export window here, you have the ability of putting some restrictions on your machine build. So if you wanted to make it where a password is required, so if you're maybe sending these out, but you don't want them to be readily available to anybody that gets their hands on them, you can assign a password. You could keep the machine from being able to be exported later. I don't generally use this functionality, but it could be good. From there, select Next, export the machine, give it a name, call it whatever you want. If everything's happy, it will say the machine configuration was successfully created. Say OK. Now we got a question in. What if I select an NCU 730 instead of an 828? So what happens between the two is there are parameters that aren't in an 828 that are required in an 840. And Sinutrain at the end of the day is actually an 840, believe it or not. So if you don't pick an 828, you may have to massage some of the machine data to get the system to run properly. The 828 portion is supposed to keep that from occurring. I still find sometimes that I have to massage them a little bit. Basically, it'll yell at you over a couple MDs. You'll go look at them, and they won't have any values in them. And generally, that's because they weren't required on the 828 side. So generally, try to pick an 828 first. If you want to use one of the other NCUs, you may have to do a couple slight changes in the machine data. Okay, so we build it. We say OK. So let's go make one, and then from there we can bring it into the system. All right. So oops, I want to go back to my machine. So here, like I said earlier, I'm going to click on the Extras button and go browse to my machine configuration tool. So pick it, and we got two options here. You can go back and adjust the settings. So halfway through, we had that option where we can set passwords and stuff. Well, you can change them. So if you set them and then you wanted to, for some reason, make a change later down the road, you can do that with the tool. Or you can create your machine, which is what we're going to do. So click Next. Here I can pick my NCU type. Again, generally I always go to 730 unless I know for sure I'm doing an 828, then I might pick the 828. Other than that, I wouldn't worry about the other ones. But you can, if you know it, pick it. It's not going to hurt us by any means. Browse through. So find your archive. So here, this is an archive that I built or I created from just a simulator I have with some drives and whatnot. But this would be the same process as if I had done it from a machine. So I'm going to have it browse to wherever it is, click the file, select open, and then I just simply hit next. And now it's going to evaluate it. So this is the point in time where it's determining whether or not this archive is sufficient. If it's not, it's going to pop up a window. If it gets to this stage, you're good. It was built with all the system variables. It's happy. So now I can give it a name. So I'm just going to call it, I don't know, test 1. Hopefully you guys are more creative than I am. You can certainly put descriptions, so if you want to tell it the axis count, anything specific about the machine, because you'll be able to view this description window later down the road when you're going to import it. So if you know the software version or anything you think is important to this machine, put in here. If you do have the language packs available, you can select them, and then the rest, so just like you saw earlier. Click Next. This is where I can change or limit the functionality of the set file I'm going to build. Point it to where I want to export. So I'm just going to put it to the same directory. Now it's going to automatically use the name that I called it, but you can change it at this point. Click Save, Final Next, Finish, and now it's starting to build. Once it's done, it's going to say that the machine configuration successfully created. Say OK. So what did it do? All it did was build a set file. I now have to bring the set file into the system. So here we're going to use, now see import, export, it's the same as if I went to new and clicked import. It's just a shortcut key. So a lot of times I'll just use my import button right here. You see it comes right into the same screen that we were just at. Click next. Let's browse to a test file, open it. Next, you can one other chance to change the name. So if somebody else is bringing it in, they could make a change. Finish, and now it's going to start importing. This process can take a minute or two. Don't be alarmed with the amount of time it takes there. It's building an entire system from this compressed file. So that's pretty normal. So we're going to go through. As this is going through, let's take a look at some of the questions. All right. Okay. It looks like I had gotten to some of those. That's good. Let me scroll up a second here. I want to know, will we have a webinar about milling machines, which has turning specifications. I'm going to be doing like a mill turn configuration like the DMG FDs, but I don't have one in the schedule yet. It's probably not going to be for my next 3 months are already planned. It's probably not going to be till a little later in the year, but I do hope to plan an FD configured webinar, absolutely. The other question is Sinutrain create G codes from Miller shop turn programs? In this question, I think they're referring to, well, there's two ways I can infer this question. Can we do G code programming inside of Miller shop turn? The answer is yes. We'll revisit this at the end, and I can show you how. Or if they're asking if Miller shop turn can create a G code program, like convert it, kind of the way Manual Guide I does for FANUC, the answer would be no. Shop turn, you can see the resulting G codes, but you can't export it like you're going to run it on another machine. But assuming you're talking about intermixing G codes, I will show you that a little later. Okay. We had also got another question. If it matters as far as the ASCII format. So when you're creating archives, there's two options, binary or ASCII. It should not make any difference. I've never run into an issue of being able to build a machine from one that was selected with ASCII or non-ASCII. I have run into scenarios when building machines from severely more complex machines when there's a lot of safety integration involved. It can get a little hairy. Although we tell you to build a machine with the machine configuration tool using all three portions of the archive, NC, drive, and PLC, you can actually make one from just NC. I have done that in rare cases, and it got me around some safety integration issues. So play with it. You know, we give you guidelines, but none of these things are set in stone outside of those couple of MDs I told you about. So fool around with it. But generally, if I can, I want to build it from all three options. Okay, so we imported it. It now shows up as a physical machine in my library. So now we can just click Start. As long as it's highlighted, it will launch that given machine. And that could be my machine on the floor. It could be any of the machines that I have. So we come in, and now we're kind of really free to do anything we would want to do out of the machine, but we can duplicate it here. Okay, so let's get back to our PowerPoint. We got a lot more content here. So now I'm going to we want to go through a little bit of kind of what can I do? How can I kind of push Sinutrain? What are the advantages outside of just having this external programming environment? And I'd say one of the first things that I use a lot is playing around with different options, different license options. So, you know, maybe you don't have the residual material functionality yet on your machine, but you want to fool with it. You want to see if it's really going to help you and it's worth buying that. Or if you're a dealer, is it worth promoting it to a customer? So here, and different from the machine, everything is actually licensed inside of Sinutrain. So you can turn on or off anything you want, use it. Now, some functions need commissioning, need parameter sets, so you're not being able to turn on everything if you don't know how to set it up. But all the licenses are here. So it's not going to yell at you because you don't have a licensed option. Now, if you want to start fooling around with licenses, you do have to make sure that our manufacturer passwords here. I put in our little picture of our sunrise, playing around with the name of our password. Those of you that know the name of the password, get it immediately. Those of you that don't, hopefully you figured out that our password is sunrise. So anyway, make sure you set your password to manufacturer for some of these functions, or you may not be able to make changes. Then from there, you go to the license options, brings us in the license screen, and now you can start to turn on licenses by checkboxing the set file options. So you just scroll down through, find the one you want to play with, like maybe, hey, I want to turn on my interpolation with more than 4 axes because I got a 5-axis machine and I want to do 5-axis motion. There you can start to select these. Now, as you build different machines from the templates, you'll notice that different licenses will have automatically come from the technology that the machine was built. Same scenario. If I'm building a machine from a machine archive, it's going to mimic or parallel the physical machine. Now, as you're playing around, as you're changing either licenses, here maybe I'm going to go into machine parameters and change machine parameters. You do want to pay attention to all of the same restrictions as to when a parameter comes into play. Will certainly apply here in Sinutrain. If I just broke out here, this is telling you what is required when changing a parameter. So like PO is a power up parameter. RE, you have to hit the reset button. The CF, or the setMD active, that's this button right here. So whenever you change one and it has CF next to it, we're waiting for you to hit that button before we make it active. Or an IM means it's immediate. You don't have to do anything else. Once you change the value, it's live. Now, you can use the reset PO within Sinutrain, and it just does a quick relaunch of this software, but kind of keeps you inside. So it does a soft boot. So that I use a lot. So if I know that there's a parameter that's a PO parameter, a lot of times I will just do the reset PO. You don't have to shut Sinutrain down entirely. If you don't want to use this, you can do a machine shutdown and just jump right out to the previous screen within Sinutrain and relaunch the machine. That does the same thing. A lot of guys think you got to completely shut down all of Sinutrain. You don't. Just has to reboot the physical machine. But this is a good indication. Now, with the nature of changing parameters, be careful. Be careful when you get to parameters that cause a memory reorder. So if you get to a parameter that's going to reorder memory, you're immediately going to see this alarm. This MD alteration would cause reorganization of the buffer memory. You're in trouble now. What happens is, generally on a machine tool, when this occurs, you make an archive, you reread in the archive, it reorders the system memory, reallocates memory from different areas. Everything's good. Sinutrain does not have an archive mechanism. So this is one of the few things you cannot do in Sinutrain. If you need to make a change that's going to reorder memory, you can't do it in Sinutrain. You would have to do it at the source and then re-import the archive into Sinutrain. So what will happen is if you let it go and you reload, you come back and the machine's going to be, for lack of a better term, a toaster. It's not going to function for you anymore. It's going to give you all kinds of weird alarms, and you're just going to have to delete the machine. So now what's nice about this is, because you don't always know which ones are going to cause memory reorders. There's no indication here that's telling you. It'll pop up the alarm immediately. So if I put the value right back to what it was, then it doesn't have to take the alarm away. I'm good, but that means that I'm not going to be able to try to take advantage of that feature because it's a memory reallocation function. Okay. Now as well, we have a few parameters here that I find very handy, especially in the Sinutrain side of the world. One of the first ones is my tool change time. Now this one is specific to simulation mode. So what happens here is when I'm running simulation doesn't take into account how long the physical machine took to tool change. It has no idea. So you can come over to this 10190 and give it amount of time. Oops, sorry guys, I clicked on the screen. You can give it an amount of time here, and then it will automatically add that time for every tool change. So you want to give it a worst case scenario. Now this has no bearing on auto mode, only simulation mode, but it will maybe give you a little bit more. So if you're using Sinutrain for time studies or for a quoting tool, then what you'll certainly want to do is make sure you give it an estimated time, and then as you run, it'll take into account. So worst case scenario, just calculate a chip to chip with your worst number of rotations of a carousel and use that as your baseline. Another one I like, maybe not as handy in Sinutrain, but it is certainly worth noting, is this bit 3 under 52210. And what that allows you to do is the system will automatically generate an end of program in MDI. It keeps you having to type M30 all the time. And in fact, it's an M32. So that means if I was playing around with my spindle functionality and wanted my spindle to stay running through MDI, it would. But this one's pretty nice. So once you check this function, you do a repower up, you go in and you'll see that there's an M32 now automatically generated for you, so you don't have to keep typing it every time you do an MDI. The other thing I like is this 52240. And what this one does is this one allows you to automatically tell it what the tool change macro is. So when I'm writing a program in G-code, I don't have to type it all the time. So like let's say for argument's sake we wanted to take a look at this one real quick. So 52240. So here in my machine, currently, right, we're writing a program, whatever we're doing, I'm going to write a basic G-code program. I go to select a tool, find a tool, say okay. So you see how that M6 auto got created for me? That only got created because that parameter is already set. So if I go to machine data, I need to put my password in. Pay attention if it says key switch 0. Sometimes when you import the machines especially, it'll be sitting at the lowest level. So we want to put our password in. So we're going to set our password just like you would on the machine tool. All right, I'm going to go to manufacturer level. Now we're going to go into, and we're going to search for, I think it's a channel MD. It's going to be a 52240. So here I have an M6 there. Maybe I wanted it to have the leading 0. I want it to be an M06. By anything being in here, that is what, and this is an immediate parameter, so I don't have to do anything else, but that is what triggers this M6. So now if I go select a new tool, and we'll go grab a different one if we have one. Let's use the same tool, it's fine. So now I get an M06. Now normally, the normal state of that parameter is blank, so that's why I always have to type M6 after every single tool change. But maybe your machine doesn't use an M6, maybe it uses an L6 or something different. Then you can customize it there. Okay. As well, it's pretty common that maybe you want to either create your own custom cycles or maybe you have cycles that you're using out at the machine tool. So let's say, for argument's sake, you're not building a machine through the machine configuration tool, but you know you have some custom manufacturer cycles or user cycles you want to support inside of Sinutrain. Well, you can bring them over. The file structure is the same structure as it is out in your machine tool. So you can physically come in, copy the files into your cycles folder structure, and now you can utilize any of those CAN cycles. Now, any files you insert here, remember you got to do a reset PO to activate them the first time. But once they're here, now they're fully functioning. So if there's, whether it's modified technology cycles or toolchain cycles or whatnot, any of the cycles, you can bring them into Sinutrain, and they'll be fully functional just like they would be out at the machine. Now, if you bring a machine through the machine configuration tool and it has custom cycles, they come with it. So you don't have to do it in that case, only if I maybe had a standard machine, but I knew I had some cycles out on my machine on the floor I wanted to parallel. Now, this is kind of cool. So even though we're in Sinutrain, I can actually set up and utilize calibration tools and probes. So let's say I wanted to run probing in an auto routine or run programming here in manual because I'm using it as a training tool. But what you have to do is you got to make sure you calibrate the physical probes. So you got to calibrate the physical part probe and then later calibrate the tool probe. But as long as you go through the calibration mechanism, the probes will physically work inside of Sinutrain. Now, it's going to just go your normal pick distance. So obviously you're never going to get a unique trigger against something. It's just going to go, you know, whatever the default parameter was in our MDs for the pick distance, but it will run a full cycle. So you can validate, if you're an auto, maybe you want to just validate the syntax of your probing and get some of the mechanism to work. All that can be done, but you do need to make sure you calibrate the probes first. So here I'm showing you a quick little calibration of our physical part probe. Next, my actual tool probe. So we can go in, and why don't we do that real quick? Why don't we come in and calibrate them just so you guys can see that mechanism. So we're in our machine, right? So first things first, I'm going to have to create, I don't think I want to use this machine only because this is my drive rack and it was never really set up for probing to begin with. So let's say I'm in a nice 5-axis machine. And now you can start to see some of the beauty of Sinutrain. I mean, here I jump from one machine to another, all kinds of different configurations. Okay, so I do need to do a tool change. See if I have one first. I do not, so I got to create a quick probe. So drill in my tool list, and I'm going to just build a probe here. And we'll just say our default length of our probe is going to be 100 millimeters. I'm going to switch this thing to inch in a second. And maybe I know it's a 5 millimeter stylus diameter. All right, in manual, cycle start. Give it my enables. Give it some feed rates. Probe is in my spindle. Okay, I'm going to switch the machine over to inch. That would be the same way you would switch them on the machine. Okay. So the probe is in the spindle. So a couple of things I have to do. Now, when I'm calibrating the physical probe, I want to go to Measure Workpiece, and I want to go to the Calibrate function. Now, you got to calibrate a probe in two things, length and radius. The radius one's pretty simple. You just go to radius, you give it a quote-unquote ring diameter, call it whatever you want. Wherever she sits, hit cycle start, it'll run through, and now it's calibrated via the radius. It's very, very simple. The tricky one is the length. So generally, you'll come in, you'll pick length, you'll hit cycle start, and it'll give you a safety margin exceeded. So what happens is you need to pre-position the probe close to 0 and then run it. So here, if you watch, if I start to jog, and I'm going to now slow down my override, I'm going to jog it right above Z0, so just above. If you want to know the total value, you'd have to go into the machine parameters to see where it was set, but just keep bringing it down and keep running the cycle until it makes it. So here, I was close enough to 0 within this pick distance that it wouldn't think that it didn't make the probe. But once you've done this, now this probe's fully functional. So now you can go into any of the measuring cycles and any of the axes cycle start, and it'll mimic if it was running a probing cycle. Same thing with the auto mode. And this would work certainly for metric or inch, do the exact same process either way. Okay. So that would be how I would physically set up the part probe. Now the tool probe, what I like to do is I like to create myself a little calibration tool. You don't have to, but we have them in our library, so I might as well build it. So under special tools, you have a calibration tool. So this would be your traditional, whatever your calibration tool you're going to keep in your magazine for your tool probe. Select OK. Oh, I didn't like that. Maybe that's my pre-allocated location. Oh, yeah. Not worried. Okay. Now I want to give it a default length. I'm setting this machine up for positive tool lengths. I'm going to give it a default calibration probe diameter. Now we're going to tool change to it. And in here, I now want to go to my measure tool, and I have my calibrate probe. You can calibrate in your length or your diameter. You can do both in one shot. Cycle start. Now, see this tool probe diameter too small? So in this case, this machine wasn't fully set up for probing. So if I go over to my alarms, hit my alarm button, and I do a help on the alarm, I see down here, where is it? Check the following machine settings, 51780. So depending on how the machine is built, you may have to set this parameter. So 51780. All right, so let's reset that. You guys can remember that number for me, right? So do a quick search for 51780. So here, the tool probe diameter was set to 0. So let's give it just some rough size. You see it's an immediate parameter, so we don't have to do anything fancy. So we can simply just go back out to jog, cycle start, and now it's going to run a probing cycle. Now my probing is set. So if I was to start to actually go and do mimic the steps I would do for a probing operation, let me pick a different tool. I'm just grabbing tools that were pre-created. All right. What if I, oh, it must be the location she's sitting in. All right, let's try now. There we go. So now it's running, and it ran a physical tool change. It ran a physical measuring cycle. So you can start to demonstrate and utilize all this probing function, even though we're in Sinutrain virtually. Okay. So we got a couple little things left. I know we're running low on time. Luckily, we've been handling a lot of the questions as they've been coming in. Okay, so another neat trick or another neat thing you can do is within Sinutrain, you can't make archives, but you can export machine data. So, let's say for argument's sake, you have some functionality on either a standard machine or some other machine that was created, and you want to compare it to an outside archive file, let's say for argument's sake. So inside of Sinutrain, we have this mechanism for creating these save data files. So it's this data admin function under machine data. And what it does is it creates these TAA files. And what the file is specifically all the parameters in that section. So just to show you real quick, let's say for argument's sake, I'm back here on my machine. We drill into my machine parameters. See this data admin button? That's the button we're talking about. So in here, I can click Save Data. And now I get a little design tree or navigation tree of what I want to save. A general machine data, a channel machine data, what channel it is, which axis I want to save. So you come in, you pick what you want. So now you're not going to get one file with everything. You have to pick each individual section, but it does give you the ability of now exporting. Now keep an eye on where it's dumping the file. So see IB data, machine data, general machine data. So as you drop it in, and I'm just calling this general machine data, oops, cap locks on, is what I'm going to call it, general machine data number 1. Just some file name for you. It'll put the .ta in. So once you build this and it says the data was saved successfully, now if you back out of your parameters and go to System Data, go to HMI and Backups, there's this IB data path that was just showing me. And inside of there, I can come down to comparison. No. What was it? There you go. So machine data, general machine data, and voila, there's the file that we just built. Here it is. This is all of the parameters specific to this Sinutrain machine for general machine data. And now I could take it, copy it out to a USB file. If you're familiar with our Create My Config suite, we have a diff tool that allows us to do file comparison on archives. You can compare a TBA file to an archive file and see the differences. So it's really, really powerful. And you can do that for all of the specifics within at least in the machine data arena. So it's just a pretty cool tool to kind of pay attention to, depending on how far you guys go with using the Sinutrain. Now as well, and this is really important, how do I get files in and out of the machine? So what you want to do is you want to start mapping directories, because that is probably one of the biggest things I think is a little bit clumsy with Sinutrain. It's kind of like an island upon itself. So you normally can't just randomly browse your PC's directory. So what you do is you create folders. So the folders, you're going to do that through creating these logical drives. So you're going to go Setup, make sure your password's in, Machine Data, HMI, logical drives, and now we build a file. Now one of the critical things, there's two critical things here. One, what type of file it is. So this would be our type of logical drive, is it? Is it a network drive? Is it just a local drive, which is just any partition on your hard drive? It's the same mechanism you'd use on the machine to map networks. And then you got to give it the path. So generally what I'll do is I'll just go to Windows Explorer, browse to wherever I want this thing pointed, and then once I've done this, it'll now create me a physical button inside of Sinutrain. And now I have a way to get out of Sinutrain, per se. So normally, if I go to Program Manager, this is all internally within this machine inside of Sinutrain. The USB, I could dump stuff to a USB externally, but that seems kind of silly. Why should I have to go out to a USB? So what we're going to do is we're going to create some custom buttons right here. So to go through the mechanism, because this is super important because you're going to do this quite a bit, you want to go to Menu Select, Setup. We want to go to our HMI button, go to Logical Drives. Now you're going to, the first one is the USB, so we're not going to change that, but we're going to go to the second one, and you have a bunch of them here. So you can create, I think, up to eight different custom buttons for different locations. But in this case, we're going to do a local drive. Now we need a path. So if we launch just our Windows Explorer and now browse to wherever I want my path to be, and in my case, see if I can, I'm actually trying to drill, this is a virtual machine, so I'm going to see if I can drill into my regular machine from my virtual machine. That'll be kind of interesting. Always fun doing things on the fly. So this is my normal programs directory. So what you want to do is if you click on it, you'll get the path. This is the critical portion, not what we were shown before, right? This little navigation that Windows 7 gives us is kind of useless to us. But if you click to the right of all these, it'll give you the path. Now we can simply, and let me go back into my programs folder. Oops. Now I can get the, why is it doing that? That's funny. There we go. The path I want, copy my path. You can just paste it right into here. Click your Activate Drives button. It tells you the drive's set up. So we go back to Program Manager. We now get a button. Voila, I'm now mapped. In this case, I'm even mapped outside of my virtual machine. So now I can just drag and drop files in and out, and it's a quick, easy way to get programs in and out of Sinutrain. Okay. Now, you can start to customize things. Certainly, if you're back here, you can change the name of the soft key if you want to give it a different name. There's a bunch of different things. You can give access levels, but at a very high level, this is minimum what you're going to do with Sinutrain is get yourself a map directory so you can bring things in and out of it. Now, a couple last things I did want to talk about here is compatibility. You always got to be careful with compatibility. You know, we're a technology-based control. We're always trying to push the envelope and stay on the leading edge of high technology. Because of that, you get issues when you're trying to do backwards compatibility. Now, our standard company policy is we're upwards compatible. So we usually like to say always upwards, never backwards. So basically what that means is if we were always to have to comply with backwards compatibility, we'd never be able to advance our functionality, especially our cycles, because we can never add anything to them. So what happens if I try to program, let's say, my machine that's running an older version of software than my Sinutrain sheet? Well, I'll run into compatibility issues. It's probably the most apparent with ShopMiller ShopTurn programs. So if you're going to be programming via ShopMiller ShopTurn, you want to make sure that the version of Sinutrain you're running matches the version of machine software you have to guarantee compatibility. From here, what happens is if I brought up a file that was created in a newer version and I open it up in an older, like you see here, I created this program, this basic cycle 800 program in 4.5. I went and tried to open it on a machine in 2.7. And look what I get. It certainly doesn't look like a ShopMill program, but believe it or not, it was. So this is the source, and it gave me an alarm across the top of the screen. It's telling me there's too many variables. But basically, the program is now rendered unusable because of this compatibility. So be very careful when it comes to compatibility. You certainly want to make sure your versions are the same. Now, when you get to G code, it's not as bad in the little step-up versions within Operate. But if you go to older legacy systems, it's a major difference, even in G code. So here you can see like our legacy 1.5 cycle on the left compared to what a new cycle in version 4.5 looks like. They're very close as far as cycle 71, but there's a lot of function changes. You know, we've made some major steps when we transitioned into Operate from pre-Operate in the G code cycles. So here you would also run into compatibility issues, so be careful. And finally, probably my biggest pain point or nuisance for me is our swivel cycle tool carrier name. So if you get into doing any 5-axis programs, you're going to notice that your machine, when the OEM built it, has a unique name for the tool carrier, for the swivel cycle. The problem is that name has to match. So if I write a program in Sinutrain and I go out to the machine, I got to edit every single cycle call that I have to make sure that my tool carrier name matches whatever my OEM assigned it. And there's no quick tricks around this. So I bring a program in from my machine on the floor. That tool carrier name was different than my Sinutrain machine. I got to edit every cycle to make sure they match. So what I usually tell guys that I find, especially if you know you're only interfacing with one type or series of machine or specific machine, change the name in the Sinutrain machine. You can edit that. So here I can go to the swivel cycle mask and make the name different, and then it'll appear differently. So I don't have to keep editing it every single time in all my part programs. So just to show you real quickly as we're winding down here, when you're in the machine parameters, you know, where that HMI button was found in machine data, if you expand the buttons over with the arrow button here, the left of the back key, you'll find the swivel data mask. And in that mask, that's where the name gets driven. So let's say we'll pick on DMG. DMG loves to name their swivel cycle DMG. Well, nobody says that you can't go in, change the name. You don't have to do anything else but change the name. Now, whether I'm using an existing program, I don't know if I have anything in this machine here. No. Oh, yeah. So here, now when we go into the cycle, now you'll notice DMG comes in the list. And actually, TC1, once I save this and we reopen it, TC1 won't even show up anymore. So if you need to tweak your Sinutrain machine to kind of match your real machine, don't be afraid of that. That's okay. It's not going to cause any major havocs to go into this swivel down a mask and change this name. And you can change it back and forth. So if you're jumping between a couple machines, or I want to get to the scenario where I can run these examples again, I can always change it back. That's not going to hurt me. And now we can go back to this one, Now the TC1 becomes in the list. So it writes on the fly, it drives on the fly, but it is a pain point, especially if you're bringing a lot of 5-axis programs back and forth. Okay, so I've been this last segment, I've been jumping through our live demonstration quite a bit. So why don't we just finish up here. We can take a couple last questions. I see a few more here, and then we can wrap things up. Okay, I did have a question. There are some DMG machines that I install, came in metric, but when I change over to inch, calibration cycles won't give me the right length of radius. So that is a known issue specifically to DMG, and it has to do with some of their custom cycles. Specifically, they're not changing their retracts between inch and metric. What I would suggest in this case, specifically talking about probing and calibration, I would go directly back to the factory. So if it's a Seebach machine or if it's a Franton machine, they're aware of it. Recently, actually, as of just a couple weeks ago, I ran into it on a Seebach machine, and they do have ways to address it, but it's in their cycle side. We got another one. Is the configuration drives available in 4.7 basic? I don't see it's within the machine. I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure. 4.7 is very, very new to us. I only really just installed 4.7 maybe a week ago, and I haven't even gotten my full version yet. So I'm not sure what I'm restricted to in the basic and what I'm allowed. Now, what I can tell you is the basic doesn't allow you to export files, so I'm going to say it probably is a limitation to 4.7, because that is one of the things that basic won't allow you to do, is take a program and ever pull it out to run in a machine. So since then why would we ever let you save to a common directory area? Then you could save them. So we can look at it real quick while I got you here. We can shut down this machine. We can launch. This is 4.7. So, I mean, 4.7's cool. The layout's changed quite a bit. So like here, when I'm going to create a machine from a template, it all does the same things I showed you. We just kind of changed the pictures a little bit. So here are those simple vertical machine, create it, gives me this nice fancy icon now. But if I go and look, I'm willing to bet we're not going to see that. It's loading, loading, loading. All right, so there's my allow access, because I haven't actually even run this one yet. So let's allow it. Boom, boom, boom. May get one extra one, we'll see. Machine's being started. Now this is just telling me I'm in the restricted license function. So now if we go menu select, setup. Oh, there you go. I'm in manufacturer level, that's good. HMI. I do not get a logical drives button. So there you go. So I'm going to say that is a limitation to 4.7 basic, because you're not going to get any higher than manufacturer, and the button's not even here. Okay, we got another question about demonstrating changing the names of the buttons. So let me jump back into, there's my final allow. Let me jump back into 4.5, and we'll launch the machine we're in, let's say. Okay. Good. So we had created one and left the name the default. So now I got actually 2 local drives, and that can be a little confusing. So if I want to change these names, just head on over to set up an HMI, go to your logical drives function, and it's this soft key text. So you want to delete the whole string. So delete everything listed here, and now I can say I'm going to call it my, my program button. So change the name right here in soft key text, say OK. So now if we jump back over to it, Program Manager, now you see it's listed program. You can change the icon. I think we can even get rid of the icon, to be honest with you. If I jump back over here and go back the local drive. Let me see. Yeah, so I can do no icon. So if I want to get a little more real estate, so you can tailor it. What I used to make the mistake, and maybe where some of you guys would driven this question, I used to leave some of the earlier segment of that name and just change the back half that said the local drive section, and then you would get some weird characters here. You want to delete the entire name. This way you'll get the full name on your button. And it'll support uppercase, lowercase. I think you need those extra characters if you wanted to automatically do the 2 lines. So you can kind of play with that. Okay. A couple extra questions came in. How accurate is cycle time in Sinutrain? It's extremely accurate, especially when I'm driving from a machine that was built through the machine configuration tool. But what I will recommend, if you're doing cycle time analysis, I would do it in auto mode. So I would physically go to auto and run the program. Because what happens is simulation doesn't take into account all the academics and all the tuning variables, but Sinutrain will. So, if I come in and I run this program, I don't happen to have the program set up right now, but if I ran this program, I would get an estimated cycle time here. I have done testing in Sinutrain on a machine tool that was heavily optimized by our engineering group, and I ran cycle time tests on programs that were taking an hour, hour and a half to run. I'd run them virtually in Sinutrain, and then I'd run them real time, and on an hour program, if there was 5 or 10 second difference, it was a lot, and a lot of that I attributed to just throttling back my override when I was leading into cut. I mean, it's right there. And again, it's taking all the drive parameters into account. That's why it's critical to have the drive parameters when you build the machine. Oh, this is actually a very, very good point. So this one, our attendee had said, my machine has screens that I don't see in Sinutrain. Why? So some of our builders, DMG specifically, but a lot of our other builders will create custom screens and custom OEM screens. Usually they're support screens, service screens, you're managing the tool changer or whatnot. So those buttons, even through the machine configuration tool, don't show up necessarily inside of Sinutrain. Also, I know DMG specifically has a utility on the top of their screen that's custom to them. That kind of stuff you're not going to see in Sinutrain. Now, if the screens were made with our own internal functionality like easy screens, then you will see them, but it depends on how the OEM built them. So I don't want to say that custom screens never show up, because they can, and they do sometimes, but don't be surprised if they're not there. That's one of those things that depends on how they develop the screens. Okay, so wow, we had a lot of great questions. Hopefully I got to everybody's questions here. If I didn't, feel free to email me or give me a call and we can take it offline. But thanks again for another great webinar.